The Solitaire series, episode 15, The Jack of Clubs, by Troy Lambert, narrated by Troy Lambert. Copyright 2020, audio copyright 2025. He calls the knaves jacks, this boy. Charles Dickens, Great Expectations. The jack in a deck of cards was originally called a knave, or in some cases, a knight. The low-class usage, jack, became more common when the designation of cards was moved to the corners, and the knave, abbreviated KN, was easy to confuse with the king, or K. Either way, whether a knave, a knight, or a now commonly called jack, typically this card represented a servant of the king, but a very specific type of servant. The knight served as both a protector and a warrior. Think of an elite fighter, a mercenary, or even a bodyguard. I'm kind of a modern knight, if you will, a lower member of the royalty, a servant of the ace and the king. More often than not, just as in a deck of cards, the queen stands between us, or in my case, behind me, because my purpose is often to guard her. The organization I belong to may be called Blackjack, but within that organization, I am known as the Blackjack. That's because I'm short, powerful, and often used to bludgeon people when necessary. It's my favorite part of the job. Just stop. Give me a... The sobbing starts, always with the fucking crying. I'll answer your questions. Just, what do you want? I hit his bicep this time. It would bruise, give him a hell of a Charlie horse, but it wouldn't do any permanent damage. I didn't want to do that kind of damage, at least not yet. The leather strap around my wrist enhances my grip on the short, blunt object. It weighs way more than it should, but that's because it's filled with lead. I hear ya, but there's no danger of getting poisoned by this thing. I ain't licking it, and besides, there's a leather covering around it, one with tight stitches like a baseball. I had to get that cover replaced once, but that was because I got blood on it, and some fucker's teeth actually tore it open. I wouldn't have shoved it in his mouth so far if I'd have known he had those bad boys filed. But that ain't this story. That's another one, for another time. They call me Blackjack. That's not because of who I work for or the weapon I use so much as how I resemble it. It's short, black, heavy, and tough. So am I. Difference is, I'm covered in tailored Armani, not leather. To the guy on the ground, that ain't gonna make a whiff of difference. I think you've been asked nicely before, I say. Even to me, my voice sounds like gravel being tossed around in a cement mixer. 20 years of smoking and slamming a shot of Johnny Walker every night, starting on your 16th birthday, will wreak havoc on your throat, let me tell you. No one believes I'm 32 when I tell them, but I am. I also almost never tell them. Damn, I heard a crack on that one, maybe a broken bone. Best to stop for a second. So I did. Ace wants to know where the card is, asshole. What card? I turned to the other fellow in the room with me. You might think an Italian mafioso would be some kind of cliche. You'd be right. Tony looks, sounds, and even smells exactly like you'd expect him to. Before you ask, he's a spaghetti-eating wine snob, too. So there's that. You're playing card, kid. You're working for Solitaire, right? The kid on the floor stays quiet. For that, I give him credit. At least he isn't a goddamn snitch, or he's more afraid of his bosses than he is of us. It's my job to change that. Opposite forearm. No cracking sound, but that one had to be close. Look, my friend here is going to keep pounding until you talk, and before you know it, you won't be able to whack off with either arm for months. You don't look like the kind of prick who's getting a lot of action, so spill. Where is it? Look, I'm new. My name is Alec, and We don't give a fuck about your name, Tony says. Your card. Fuck, I'm dead either way. Smart boy, I said, getting back into the conversation. It's in my back pocket. Well, get it. You broke my arm. So I did. Still, I ain't touching your ass. Tony? Jesus, you sissy, help me get him up, he says. We lift the kid, awkward as fuck since I hit him pretty hard on both his thighs, too, so he isn't standing on his own too well. Lucky for him, his balls still function and he won't be pissing blood, unless the card ain't where he says it is. That arm will be a clean break, too. I'm hard. I ain't cruel. People confuse the two way too often. I bend him over and hold his arms together, which I can tell hurts like a sumbitch because his breath comes in gasps, but I can't have him trying any funny business while Tony is fetching what we came for. Tony reached 2 fingers down in the lad's jean back pocket, and what do you know? They come out holding a 2 of spades. I let his arm go, and he sits back on the hard wooden chair while Tony lifts the card, looking at it this way and that. "What the fuck is this?" he says. "It's my ID, I guess," the kid says. "But there's nothing to it. It's not like the others. It's just a card." He hands it to me, and I look it over. Sure as shit, he's right. The other cards we've been getting have all been like those magnetic key cards, so they have something hid inside them. This one is just normal. Or at least it looks to be. Maybe Ace knows something we don't. I look at Tony and tell him just that. He looks back at the kid. "This the only one you got?" "It is. I told you, I'm new. I'm only on like my second job. Who are you guys anyway?" "They call me Blackjack," I say. "That guy there is Tony." "Pleased to meet you," Tony says. He says it as casual if he just met somebody's brother in a restaurant, not some guy he just beat the shit out of. "So, we'll let you go. We're going to take this card to our boss," Tony says. "If it's what he's looking for, you won't see us again. But if it ain't," I say, "you'll be seeing more of me and my blackjack." Okay, he stammers out. We have to help him to his feet. He's a fucking mess, understandably so. I mean, he's got deep bruises on every one of his limbs, and at least one of them is broken. But we get him out the door and on his way. Then we turn to each other. "What now?" I ask. "We go see Ace," Tony says. We go to his car, get in, and head downtown, card in hand. Alec fell more than slid into the driver's seat of his car. His left arm hurt. He'd heard the crack and was sure it was broken. He also felt bruises forming on his biceps, thighs, and his intact forearm. He knew a few things from taking beatings before. First, things would get worse before they got better. Tomorrow would be rough, the next day a little worse, and it would be the third day before he turned the corner. He could only hope they let him keep movement in his fingers, if the break in his forearm was clean enough. Either way, he would be out of commission for 4 to 6 weeks with the cast. That's if he didn't get fired from his new job for losing the card. He laid his head back on the headrest and closed his eyes for a second. Turn the key, drive back, and then go to the hospital or a doctor? Or hope the organization had one? They had to, right? He thought. Then he wouldn't have to answer questions. Or what? What were his other options? He was in no shape to run. He just had to face right away that within the first couple weeks on the job, he had lost the card they'd given him, or rather, had it taken. Shit. He opened his eyes and heard a tap on his window. He jumped and pain shot up his arm. A large man stood there, grim look on his face, sunglasses hiding his eyes. He pointed downward. Alex rolled down his window. "Yeah?" "Follow me. Somebody wants to see you." Alec did as he was told. What choice do I have, really? He thought. None was the constantly correct answer. He followed the car in front of him. Every bump and pothole on the side streets of Vegas sent more pain shooting through his arm, and the bruises were indeed worsening. He felt all of his muscles tightening, and he wanted to curl up in a ball. Impossible, when you might be driving to your death. Fortunately, the drive was not a long one. The sedan in front of him stopped at the entrance of a small brick building, and Alec attempted to get out of the car. Attempted was a good word. He really needed help moving his left leg, which had stiffened considerably. Normally, he would have lifted it with his arms, but he couldn't do that either. His right arm was now on fire as well. The large man who led him here had a partner, and fortunately or otherwise they saw his struggles. They came over to his car, and Alec found himself in a painful fireman's carry over a large, steel-like shoulder. A moment later he was through the door, the jam narrowly missing his head as he was transported through, and then he saw the building itself was not at all what it appeared to be on the outside. Instead, it was a nice office space with a reception area, one that he saw through upside-down eyes, and then a series of rooms. He was taken into the last one and laid in a quite modern hospital bed. The gentlemen who had escorted him both left and shut the door. Alec closed his eyes. A doctor arrived a few moments later. "How are you doing?" he asked as he raised the head of the bed. "Sore," he said. "Arm hurts." Alec found himself unable to make complete sentences. The pain was one thing, but he was also exhausted. "Let's get that arm set, shall we?" Alec closed his eyes again. He felt what was happening to him, but the pain seemed distant, as did the room he was in. At some point, he felt a little pinch as something was injected into his arm, and after that, the pain lessened even more. He felt himself drifting off. Not a long time later, he woke to see a man standing beside his bed. "Hi," the man said. He was short, muscled, Asian, probably Japanese. "I'm Nakamura. People call me Kay." "Okay," Alex said. He tried to sit up but found that impossible. A whirring noise sounded, and the bed forced him to a sitting position. His visitor had a sling and what looked like a cast, too. "Did Blackjack attack you, too?" Alec asked. Blackjack? No. Not a short dude with a blackjack? Is that who did this to you?" "Yeah." "You're new." It was a statement, not a question. "I am." "You were issued a two of spades?" "Yes." Alec wondered if this man was just going to make statements or if he had questions. "Whoever did this took it from you, yes?" "Yes." "Did they," the man hesitated, "look at it?" "Yes, they did." "Did they seem to find anything?" "No. They said it was a plain card. In fact, they seemed upset, but they just took it with them. They said something about just turning it in." "Good. You did well. Rest. You earned a bonus." "What?" An envelope landed on his chest. He could just see inside the flap, and there appeared to be a lot of money inside. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'll be out of commission." "Don't worry," Nakamura said. "You did well. You actually did us a huge favor." "I did?" "We should be thanking you. Hang in there. You'll be back working in no time. We have some things for you to do while you recover." "Ah, okay." Alex stared at the other man awkwardly for a moment, and then the man left. He found himself alone and very tired. Whatever drugs they were giving him, at least the pain was only a dull ache. Alec closed his eyes and went back to sleep. "We came straight here, boss," Tony said. They were in the upstairs office of a club in Las Vegas, one where the front was filled with dancers and young people drinking too much and doing too many drugs, and the back was the location for high-stakes gambling games. Ace, the owner and the boss, sat in a leather chair behind his giant desk, staring at the card. Tony and Blackjack sat in smaller chairs in front of the desk. "Looks like a regular card," he said. "Nothing special. Who was the guy you took it from?" "A low-level collector of some kind," Blackjack answered. "Still, they have cards of some sort, right?" "Yeah, but they usually mean something or do something. Most of them have something special about them. This one... this one..." Ace stopped. He stared at the pattern on the back. Tony watched him reach out and touch it. He then sat on the center of his desk, opened the drawer, and brought out a letter opener. He poked at the card from the back, flipped it over, and then poked at the front. "What the hell?" he said. Tony saw a small silver button fall out of the card. It looked like a watch battery, just a thin disc, not even that large. But as soon as it struck the desk, it started to smoke, shrinking as it did. At first, the smoke just smelled funny, like rotten eggs or something. It scratched at his throat, and Tony tried not to breathe it in. He tried to turn his head, but it was too late. He choked and felt something in the back of his throat tear. He tasted blood. He looked at Ace, whose face was dark red, almost purple. He coughed. Blood splattered the desk. Tony coughed and added to it. Then Blackjack did the same beside him. The puddle on the desk grew. Suddenly, the door flew open, and Tony felt himself dragged out and down the metal stairs that led to the dance floor below. Music assaulted his ears, but the smell was better, like a mix of pot and booze, but not like his aunt's egg salad after too long in the sun. He turned over on all fours and coughed again. More blood came from his throat, what felt like a lot of it. But after 3 or 4 similar coughs, he found he could finally breathe. He looked over to see Blackjack and Ace in similar positions on all fours. What the hell was that? He asked. Then his vision swam and he passed out. The last thing he felt was his head thudding on the dance floor. The end. Thanks for listening to the Solitaire series, episode 15, The Jack of Clubs. Stay tuned for the next in the series, The Five of Spades.